As we begin the 2015 legislative session, the most serious issue that we face is the funding of our state's general fund. We spent the last 4 years climbing out of a financial hole. We have right-sized and we have saved taxpayers over $1.2 billion annually by doing what the people of Alabama ask us to do. We have streamlined government to make it more efficient. We've consolidated agencies. We've refinanced bonds. And we have made government work better for the taxpayers of this state. And this will continue. We're working at the present time with the leadership, especially our leadership in the Senate. And I want to thank Senator Marsh for all of his leadership on this issue. We will continue to right-size and streamline government. As you know, the general fund covers all non-education functions of our state government. Agencies like mental health and Medicaid and corrections all have a very important role in government, and these agencies depend on funding for the general fund to operate. 3 years ago, we had to borrow from the Alabama Trust Fund in order for these agencies that depend on the general fund even to survive. That money is now gone, and we're left with a critical choice. Do we continue on the same status quo path, or do we look for a new option that helps us in the long run? Over the last few months, I have taken a strategic look at the general fund. And just like I did as a doctor, I carefully examined the patient to determine the diagnosis. I have taken a careful review of the funding sources and the structure of our general fund. I am the doctor of 5 million people in this state, and these Alabamians expect government to operate properly, and the general fund is not doing that. We have debts that go back to 2005, and they have to be repaid. We have borrowed money to prop up the general fund in order for state agencies to operate. And for decades, the state has failed to confront problems in how the general fund is funded or address the critical funding needs for our agencies. The temporary solution has been to take money from one area and to help plug funding holes in another, and this has caused significant problems for this fund. And every year, we face funding challenges with the general fund, and this year, the challenge is even greater. We face a $700 million shortfall in the general fund budget, and we cannot ignore it any longer. Here's how we arrived at that number. $265 million in one-time money that we used to prop up the general fund is no longer available. We need to annually repay the Alabama Trust Fund $32 million for the money that was previously borrowed long before we got here. Medicaid needs an increase of $115 million to operate, and part of that money is repayment money to the federal government. Corrections needs an increase of at least $40 million. We've been creative on how we fund some agencies, and we have pushed education dollars to the general fund in the tune of $187 million. This needs to revert back to education. We've taken money from our road and bridge money to support general fund agencies, and I want money designated for roads and bridges to go to roads and bridges. And when you add all of that up, it adds up to $702 million. Just like Alabama families, we have to make sacrifices in order to operate our budgets. State government needs to do the same as we do in our own household budgets. I have been a conservative Republican my entire life, and taxes are not popular with me. No one likes to pay taxes. No one wants to pay more taxes. I don't like it any more than you do or anyone else across this state. But we have to face the challenges at the present time. Now, I understand that some people will not be happy with this plan, but I am committed, totally committed to reforming the finances of this state, and I am here today to announce how we plan to accomplish it. I strongly believe that taxes should be fair among all people. It is unfair for certain groups to be taxed for goods and services while others are not taxed for those same goods and services. I also strongly believe that debts owed must be paid. Alabama families, just like I know, pay their debts, and the state must pay our debts. This is the conservative approach. It is not fair to saddle the next governor with hundreds of millions of dollars in debt, and I will not do that. My plan will not impact the majority of Alabamians. However, it will be fair to all Alabamians. Now, here are my proposals. Number one, combined reporting. Close the financial loopholes that allow international and national corporations to avoid paying their fair share in taxes. Out of more than 3,000 Fortune 500 corporate tax returns filed in Alabama for the 2012 tax year, almost 58% paid zero income tax to our state. That is unfair to the rest of the Alabama business owners, and I want it stopped. 24 states already have combined reporting for corporations, and Alabama needs to be the 25th. By having combined reporting, we estimate an increase of at least $20 million. Number two, financial institution excise tax. Sales tax is something that people are used to paying. If I go to a store and I purchase paper and pens for my personal use, I pay sales tax on it. The financial institution excise tax allows banks to receive a credit for sales tax paid. That is not fair to other institutions in Alabama who do not receive the same credit. By removing the financial institution excise tax, we estimate $1 million increase in revenue. Number three, insurance premium tax. Current Alabama law allows insurance companies to reduce the amount of taxes they pay based on various credits allowed by law. By removing the credits allowed with the insurance premium tax, we estimate this year a $25 million increase in revenue. Number four, utility license tax. Municipalities that provide utility services like power and water to their people are not required to pay a utility tax on those utilities, and that's 2.2%. Municipalities have received an unfair exemption for that tax, and I plan to remove it. With removing the exemption for municipal utilities, we estimate a $47 million increase in revenue. Number five, individual income tax. I plan to eliminate the tax withholding exemption certificates. Some employees have claimed to be exempt from withholding, so employers have withheld no tax. Then these employees have failed to file tax returns, while other Alabamians do file. We expect an increase just by removing that of $12 million in revenue by ending this practice. Number six, sales taxes on automobiles. Compared to the surrounding states, the sales tax for automobile purchases in Alabama is low. I am proposing to increase the rate for automobile purchases to 4%, which, by the way, is our sales tax. And this will bring in an estimated $200 million. We still will remain below any state that surrounds us. In fact, the next closest state is Mississippi at 5%. Number 7, rental tax for automobiles. I am proposing to increase the automobile rental tax to 4%, with an estimated $31 million increase in revenue. Number 8, a cigarette tax. As a doctor, the dangers of cigarettes on my patients and on the people of the state of Alabama are deadly. As governor, cigarettes pose a serious financial burden to the resources of our state, and I plan to increase the cost of cigarettes by 82 cents per pack, and we estimate $205 million in revenue. This plan will raise $541 million in revenue for the general fund. Now you say, where does the $700 million come in? I will also propose unearmarking $187 million to solve the financial shortfall in the general fund, and this reaches the $700 million. 91% of all of our revenues collected by state government are already earmarked. This far exceeds any other state. And Alabama has the highest percentage of any state in the country. I propose that we unearmark some of the funds so that we can better determine the needs of our state and steer the taxpayer dollars where they will be used best. We will bring a plan next week to replace the $187 million that we have unearmarked, and we will create more money in the Education Trust Fund. We will use the stabilization fund, which will go above the cap. This is part of our what we call the Canfield Act, or this stabilization fund will have money in it next year, and we will be able to use that to make up this difference. We will use this stabilization fund and have more money for education, including K through 12, higher ed, and our 2-year college system. Let me be clear, very clear. My plan does not hurt education. In fact, let me also be clear, the people in education, K through 12, higher ed, our 2-year college systems, they are going to be the happiest that they have been in 8 years, because our plan will give them more money than they have had probably since 2008. So they're going to be very happy with the plan that we're going to be bringing. I was elected to make Alabama a better place, and part of doing this requires some tough decisions, and I'm going to make those tough decisions. I challenge my colleagues in the Alabama legislature to have an open mind to this revenue plan and to work with me to put Alabama state budgets on a better path forward. Aren't you, like me, ready for some permanent solutions that supports a fair and equitable tax treatment for everyone? We have to live within our means, and I believe that this plan is our best chance to get the general fund in order. I am a conservative. I believe there is nothing more conservative than getting Alabama's fiscal house in order and planning for our future. And I am asking you to support me.